As the sun began to set on the small town of Millfield, Indiana, students and teachers alike were eagerly anticipating the end of another school day. However, what they didn't know was that this day was about to take a turn for the worst. At approximately 3:15 p.m. on March 21, 2018, Millfield Elementary School went into lockdown. It all started when a student reported seeing an unidentified figure lurking in the shadows of the playground. The school's principal, Mrs. Adams, immediately ordered a lockdown, instructing all students and staff to quickly move into their designated safe zones. As the doors were locked and the blinds were pulled shut, a wave of fear swept through the school. Students huddled in corners, whispering nervously to each other. Teachers struggled to keep the children calm, despite their own mounting anxiety. As the minutes ticked by, the school's intercom crackled to life. A voice, low and raspy, began to speak. "Attention, Millfield Elementary," it said. "We have taken control of the building. Do not attempt to escape, or you will face the consequences." Panic erupted as the students and teachers realized that they were no longer safe. The voice continued to taunt them, making vague threats and promising violence. Everyone was on edge, wondering when the intruder would strike. The police were quickly alerted, and they arrived on the scene within minutes. But despite their efforts, they were unable to locate the intruder. The lockdown continued for hours, with students and staff growing increasingly restless and frightened. It wasn't until late into the night that the intruder was finally caught. It turned out to be a former student who had been expelled the previous year. He had been seeking revenge on the school and had planned the entire lockdown as a twisted way to get back at his former teachers and classmates. In the aftermath of the lockdown, the students and staff were left shaken and traumatized. The incident made headlines across the country, raising questions about school safety and the measures that need to be taken to protect our children. But even as time passed and the wounds began to heal, a sense of unease lingered in the halls of Millfield Elementary. Who was the intruder, really? What had driven him to such extreme measures? And most importantly, could this happen again? As the town of Millfield grappled with these questions, one thing was certain: the memories of that fateful day would never be forgotten. The next story took place at Forest High School in Ocala, Florida. On April 20, 2018, a student brought a loaded shotgun onto campus and opened fire. The school was immediately put on lockdown as students and staff fled for their lives. The shooter, a 19-year-old former student, had a history of mental illness and had made several concerning statements in the weeks leading up to the shooting. Despite this, he was still able to obtain the weapon and carry out his horrific attack. In the end, one student was injured and the shooter was apprehended. But the incident left a deep scar on the community, raising questions about mental health care and gun control in America. As the investigation continued, rumors began to circulate about the shooter's motives. Some said he had been bullied, while others claimed he had a grudge against the school. But no one could say for sure what had driven him to commit such a heinous act. In the years that followed, Forest High School became known as a symbol of tragedy and loss. The families of the victims struggled to come to terms with their grief, while the students and staff tried to move forward in the wake of such a traumatic event. But even as life returned to normal, The events of that day lingered in the minds of everyone involved. Parents hugged their children a little tighter, and teachers became more vigilant about school safety protocols. The school itself underwent several changes in response to the incident. Security cameras were installed in every classroom and hallway, and all classroom doors were retrofitted with stronger locks. Teachers received additional training on how to handle emergency situations, and a full-time security guard was hired to patrol the school grounds. But despite all these measures, some students and staff members still reported feeling uneasy in the days and weeks following the lockdown. Some claimed to have seen or heard strange things during the incident, things that couldn't be easily explained. One teacher, Mrs. Johnson, reported hearing what sounded like someone whispering in her ear during the lockdown. She said the voice was cold and menacing, and that it seemed to be coming from right behind her. When she turned around, however, there was no one there. A student named Tyler claimed to have seen a figure standing outside his classroom window during the lockdown. He said the figure was tall and thin, with pale skin and glowing eyes. Tyler's description of the figure was similar to that of the Slender Man, a popular internet meme that had gained a cult following in recent years. Despite these reports, school officials were quick to dismiss them as the result of stress and anxiety. They insisted that nothing unusual had occurred during the lockdown, and that everyone was safe and accounted for. But for those who had experienced the lockdown firsthand, the memories would never fade. The fear and uncertainty of that day would remain with them for years to come, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the ever-present threat of danger. As for the identity of the intruder who had sparked the lockdown, that remains a mystery to this day. The police investigation turned up no leads, and no suspects were ever apprehended. It seemed as though the intruder had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a trail of terror and confusion. In the end, the only thing that could be done was to try and move on from the incident, to return to a sense of normalcy and routine. But for those who had been through the lockdown, that would prove easier said than done. The memory of that day would haunt them forever, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the walls of their seemingly safe and secure school.